Welcome, friends. My name is Ann Pimentel,
And I'm Roger Pimentel.
and we're a married couple having honest conversations about the beautiful, messy middle of Latter-day Saint life. We're excited to be here for another episode of And Yet We Believe. And what are we talking about today?
Well, we've titled this episode, How Learning from Everywhere Makes Us Better Latter-day Saints. And I kind of want to emphasize also how learning from other faiths makes us better Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
And this is something that I've kind of come to later in life, learning from other faiths and really valuing that. And I have a story to start us off with, because for me, it was not always that way. And there was perhaps a long stretch in my life where stuff from other faiths was kind of scary.
Yeah.
And there was some anxiety around it. And I think culturally as a church, we do that. We have anxiety around like outside religious ideas. Now, I think I may have told this story on the podcast before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's so applicable here. And I think it's such a clear example. So when I was a teenager, when I graduated from high school, a friend gave me a book as a graduation present. And
a non-LDS friend?
Yes, a Christian friend gave me a book as a graduation present, and it was a Christian book, and it was a very nice gesture. But because the book was not written by an LDS author, I was super weirded out by it. And like I was holding this ticking time bomb sort of a thing. I did not know what to do with this book. I didn't want to read it. I didn't know what strange ideas it might have in it. And I ended up just throwing it away. Like this nice book that I'd been given, I just put it in the garbage and threw it away. The book, incidentally, is called My Utmost for His Highest, which is like a daily devotional book, like a really benign, really kind of nice Christian book. And one of the top-selling devotional Christian books of all time. Like widely read, widely accepted. I was trying to do the math on how many copies of it have been sold. I think we're about in like A Wrinkle in Time territory. Like it's sold as many copies as that. Or The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. That's how many copies of this book had been sold. This book that freaked me out. For those watching, I've got a copy of it in my hands because in my embarrassment now about who I was as a teenager, I've gone and I've bought a copy of it so that I could have it and I could look through it. And it's lovely. It's a daily devotional thing. It's totally normal. But I think this is such an apt description and example of the anxiety and kind of weirdness that we sometimes have around things that come from other faiths.
Yeah, and I think that we have every right to feel that because we've kind of been taught that.
Okay, yes. Okay, I agree with that. Not that the idea is right, but we certainly have inherited it.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be clear, we have also been told to read other things. You know, we've been told to go out and learn from others. Sure. And we'll get to that point. But let's first make the point of how that fear was kind of instilled into all of us.
Yeah.
Or I won't speak for all of us. Into us.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fairly common fear or concern that Latter-day Saints have. There are quite a few quite alarming quotes
Okay.
that can be found.
All right, let's jump right in.
Well, and I think the way that I see it now is often people will talk disparagingly about people from other faiths because there is a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge.
Okay, yep.
And so I think that's what we're seeing play out in this fear to not learn about others. We're seeing this, not hatred, because we all know we need to be nice to people, but there is just a deep-rooted mistrust or distrust in people from other faiths.
I think we're willing to respect people of other faiths. I think culturally there's an unwillingness to learn from people of other faiths.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to bring to attention is how recent and consistent this still is.
Okay.
Which maybe we aren't aware of. Because you can go back. I think we both have a quote from Elder Peterson.
Yes.
Which we'll get to. But this is from a 2023
oh dear
doctrinal mastery manual. So it's what they used to call scripture mastery.
So this is seminary curriculum.
Yeah. This says, as part of the Lord's appointed process for obtaining spiritual knowledge, he has established sources through which he reveals truth and guidance to his children. These sources include the light of Christ, the Holy Ghost, the scriptures, parents, and church leaders. The first presidency and the quorum of the 12 apostles, the Lord's prophets on the earth today, are a vital source of truth. We can also learn through other trustworthy sources, so that's good.
Okay.
But it says that as we have questions or, we're not sure what the Spirit is teaching us, that we need to go to the divinely appointed sources for answers and direction.
Got it.
So, yes, it is saying, like, you can read other things, but
always come back.
Yeah, always come back, do them first, and it better be in line with what our church is teaching.
Yeah, and I think I can feel the line that they're trying to tread here, because they're wanting to say, don't go look up a bunch of anti stuff on the internet or whatever. That's always what I've heard in lessons or whatever. And so I think that's what they're trying to say. And I think that worry about like anti stuff results in us feeling like we're going to get infected by something from another faith. I think that was me as a teenager, like, oh no, I have this book and it's probably going to infect me with something, which is crazy. Well,
I think it's all in a rooted fear of being pulled away from the church. Whether that is to no church or to some other church, we have this fear of anything different from our faith.
I would even say that until just recently, the idea of using other Bible translations fit into this as well. Like,
yes.
Oh, you're using the NIV? That's not an okay Bible.
Okay, but I found a quote about Elder Holland from 2021. Okay, he says, let me just find where this is. Elder Holland, this was an interview he did, and he said that his personal gospel study includes reading from a study Bible that is published through Oxford University and includes updated scholarship and an extensive series of footnotes, all prepared by non-Latter-day Saint biblical scholars.
That has to be the annotated Oxford NRSV.
It is. And, well, I don't know if it was, I think it's the Oxford Standard Bible.
Oh, okay.
That it might be not the NRSV. But anyway, in 2021... Elder Holland is saying that he studies every morning with a Bible that is not the KJV.
That's years before the recent change around Bible translations.
Yeah. And I mean, this is my first time seeing this, so maybe all of them do that, and we just never knew because they don't share it publicly, right? Like, pull up the curtain. We need to see what's behind the curtain a little more.
Well, there's an assumption in the church that I think goes back to this idea of us having the fullness of the gospel, which turns into we have everything and we don't need anything from anybody else. And also I think kind of implicitly communicates, we're going to understand it better than anybody else. And when it comes to the Bible, I don't think that's true. We should probably go to the Marquis Peterson quote.
Yeah. Do you want to read it or do you want me to?
I can. I've got it right here. This is from 1962, so this is a little further back. He says, no matter how bright other religious teachers may be, we do not and cannot regard them as authorities in interpreting the doctrines of the Bible. We must not put their views on doctrine ahead of ours. Yikes.
Yeah.
I do not love this.
Yeah.
Because my experience with Christians of other Christian denominations is they know the Bible extremely well.
They know it way better than any Mormon, save Dan McClellan.
Right.
I do not know the Bible nearly as good or as well as the woman that is a non-denominational Christian that leads my Bible study.
Right.
Right? Like, she knows the Bible inside and out, and she pulls references and all sorts of things, and I'm like, isn't there a story one time about, whatever? And she's like, oh yes, that's in, whatever. And there are people that know way more than us.
And that's what I love about that call out from Elder Holland is he's mentioning specifically, this is non-LDS Bible scholars. There are LDS Bible scholars. There are so many fewer than there are. I mean, we're talking, centuries of Bible scholars in other Christian denominations that have laid so much groundwork for what we have today in the KJV, for one, and every other version, and so much understanding about the Bible. This is not an LDS thing.
Yeah. And you had talked a little earlier about how we have this feeling or knowledge, or however you want to say it, that we have all of the truth. We have the truth, the restored gospel. I just lost my spot. Where is this? I think let's do this one. In 2012, Elder Oaks was quoting Joseph F. Smith, who said, "We believe in all truth, no matter to what subject it may refer. No sect or religious denomination in the world possesses a single principle of truth that we do not accept or that we will reject. We are willing to receive all truth from whatever source it may come." And so I think he is acknowledging that other faiths, other religions do have bits of truth. And
lots of truth.
Yeah. And I think it is a shame when we ignore that and say they have nothing to teach me.
Absolutely. So let's roll the wheel of history back even further to Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Because Joseph Smith is such a good example here, because he was not bothered by this at all. He was not exclusive about this at all, to the extent that he would invite pastors of other faiths to come preach to the saints, and he was just not bothered by it.
Yeah, which I think is fascinating, because the thing that I know that I've learned about Joseph Smith is when he goes to the Sacred Grove and asks which church is correct, and God says they all lean near to me with their hearts, but their lips are far, or their lips, but their hearts are far from me.
Right.
And so then to have him turn around, 10 years later and be inviting pastors from other religions to preach to the Mormons, that's incredible. And that's not the part we hear about. Right? We hear that no one else is right. We don't hear that Joseph welcomed so many other religions in.
Yeah, and there's this bit there was a visitor, I think from England, to Nauvoo, and he wrote later, and he said, "Joe Smith was in the practice of inviting strangers who visited Nauvoo of every shade of politics or religion to lecture to his people, and was not afraid of any party drawing his people away from him."
What a difference we live in right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get so kind of uptight about these things, about, holding a book that's written by somebody of another Christian faith. Joseph Smith did not care.
And I wonder if some of that is based in how Joseph Smith was largely a universalist.
Right.
He thought everybody was going to get to God or get back to heaven. And I don't know that he had that same conviction in the way that we hold it now of we are the true church, capital T.
Only,
yeah. So I don't know. That's really interesting. I will say the way that I see this playing out now is the devotionals at BYU. I assume BYU Hawaii and BYU Idaho also have them. I only went to BYU Provo.
Right.
But they have devotionals where they're inviting people from different faiths. One of my favorite devotionals I've ever heard is from William Barber. He's an incredible pastor and preacher, and not LDS. And it was incredible.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome. And lest you think that this bit about Joseph Smith is a one-off, Joseph Smith talked a lot about how all truth, we should be receptive to all truth. And I can just rattle off a couple other things. He said, one of the grand fundamental principles of Mormonism is to receive truth, let it come from where it may. He said the saints should be ready to believe and teach all true principles that exist, regardless of the source. He even started naming names. He said, have the Presbyterians any truth? Yes. Have the Baptists, Methodists, etc. any truth? Yes. He was very, very clear in what he taught, that truth can come from anywhere and we should be open to it.
Yeah. And even in 1852, John Taylor said, we should be acquainted with all things and should obtain intelligence both by faith and study. We're instructed to gather it out of the best books and become acquainted with governments, nations, and laws. So he wasn't even limiting it to spiritual knowledge, but all knowledge.
Brigham Young, kind of the same. We skipped over Brigham.
Yeah.
We were from Joseph Smith to John Taylor. Brigham Young says, Mormonism embraces every principle of truth for time and all eternity, no matter who has it.
Yeah. And then if we go a little closer to our time, in February of 1978, so before the priesthood ban and restriction was lifted, the first presidency put out a message that said, the great religious leaders of the world, such as Muhammad, Confucius, and the reformers, as well as philosophers, including Socrates, Plato, and others, received a portion of God's light. Moral truths were given to them by God to enlighten whole nations and bring a higher level of understanding to individuals. Consistent with these truths, we believe that God has given and will give to all people sufficient knowledge to help them on their way to eternal salvation, either in this life or in the life to come.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you think something like that could come out today?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I don't know that it would.
Yeah. Especially not right now, because we're in such a era of misinformation and alternative facts. I think that there is just a mistrust of information in general. So I don't know if they could push something out like that right now.
Yeah.
I wish they would.
Well, let's round out the theological basis for receiving all truth, because we've talked about church leaders. We haven't talked about scriptures.
Right.
But there's also there's so much.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe researching this topic because just scripture after scripture after scripture came up. Do you want to kick us off? Do you have one?
Well, I mean the most common one talking about this is Doctrine and Covenants 88, 118, that says, and as all have not faith, seek ye diligently and teach one another words of wisdom. Yea, seek ye out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning even by study and also by faith. And then we can go right into the Articles of Faith, number 13.
Right. If there's anything virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy, we seek after these things. And in neither of those is it saying this is limited to within the church or by an LDS author or that's been through correlation, or which didn't exist at the time, of course. But you get my point. It's saying anything praiseworthy, we should be going after.
And I think that seek is actually the most important part of that whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Because that's an action verb. We're not going to just sit back and if we happen to hear something cool, but we are actively seeking for things that are going to enrich us and help us learn more about God.
Yeah. Some final ones. Moroni 7:16 talks about everything which inviteth to do good is of God. And then maybe also from that same verse is that point that gets made about the Spirit of Christ is given to every man and every woman.
Yeah.
Not just Latter-day Saints, not just Americans, not just white people, all of these things. Still, even now, the membership of the church is such a small percentage of the population of the world.
We're a blip.
Absolutely. That I still can't believe that God would say, I'm going to give truth to only these people, and I'm going to leave everybody else out. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, and to send that point home, Elder Orson F. Whitney, way back at the beginning of the church, said, God is using more than one people for the accomplishment of his great and marvelous work. The Latter-day Saints cannot do it all. It is too vast, too arduous for any one people. They, the people of other faiths, are our partners.
Oh, man.
Isn't that good?
How do we not get this right?
I know. And how has that sort of quote just stayed hidden for so long?
Right.
Why don't we have that posted, in our libraries in the church building or something?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Which library is kind of a fake word there, but...
Along with the VHS tapes and whatever's in there. So... how much do we do this? How much do we gather truth from everywhere? And I think institutionally the answer is not very much.
Yeah, it seems that there's kind of some approved people that the general authorities would quote from, C.S. Lewis being the first person that has the most mentions in conference.
Yeah, I was trying to think of who do general authorities quote, and all I could think of was President Monson quoting The Music Man. Which passes the test for whatever reason. But you don't hear them quoting other spiritual thinkers. Like, they're not quoting the Pope. They're not even quoting, like, early Christian thinkers like Origen or Augustine or Jerome or Tertullian or the mystics, or...
Definitely not over the pulpit. Because I think when they go out, and because I actually saw, I think it was President Hinckley did quote the Vatican II conference, writings that they had. And so, but that wasn't at conference. It was at a different, like, symposium sort of thing. So I think that there are instances where they do that, but it is not to the broader church. So most of us don't ever hear about it.
Yeah. Okay. So this brings us to the thesis of this episode, which is we have both learned a lot from voices outside of our faith in recent years. Mm-hmm. And I literally actually believe that these things have made me a better Latter-day Saint.
Amen.
And so I think...
You are a better...
Not much better. And I think many Latter-day Saints would kind of say, well, why? Mm-hmm. You know, like, we have lots of conference talks.
Isn't that enough?
Yeah, I have a finite amount of time. How about I just focus on that? And I would say if that feeds you, then great. Mm-hmm. But if you're having the experience where you're sitting and you're watching General Conference and you're going, I think I've heard this talk before. Yeah. There's another talk about faith and another talk about pioneers. Pioneers. Some of these outside voices for me have been fresh and compelling and have brought the Spirit into my life in new ways. Mm-hmm. And that has made me a better Christian and a better Latter-day Saint. Yeah,
and even for me, in my experience, it has been people that are not trying to teach me explicitly religious things, but I am learning things that strengthen me in my spiritual life. So I do a lot of anti-racism work, and doing that work has actually brought me closer to Jesus because I understand Jesus better in this work. It has helped me learn to see people, to stand up for their human dignity, to stand up and speak up for people on the margins. Those sort of things are what anti-racism work is. And so when I've had a stake president say, we don't do anti-racism things because in our stake we only teach about Jesus. Right. And I'm like, well, then you don't understand anti-racism work.
Right.
Because it's 100% Jesus. And while all of the people that have influenced me in that work are religious themselves, not necessarily just Christian, but they are religious people. So I'm sure that that's influencing their work. It hasn't been an explicit thing. Mm-hmm. So I have a few quotes to kind of give this example.
Okay, yeah, I love this.
So Valerie Kaur, who is from the Sikh religion, she wrote See No Stranger. We've quoted her before.
Yep.
She's one of our favorites. She says, as I move through my day and come across faces on the street or subway or on a screen, I say in my mind, sister, brother, sibling, aunt, uncle. I start to wonder about each of them as a person. Obviously, this just confirms our LDS belief that we're all siblings from our heavenly parents, right? So she is a woman who has a completely different religion than me, and yet we share this one bit, and it just strengthens me.
Love that.
Brian Stevenson, who wrote Just Mercy, he says, each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. We all need mercy, we all need justice, and perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace. That is just beautiful to me.
It is.
And if that doesn't speak about Jesus Christ, I don't know what does.
Right.
Like, that is the gospel right there. Mm-hmm. Oshita Moore, who wrote Dear White Peacemakers, she says, anti-racism peacemaking is the work of solidarity and shared suffering. It's not perfect, it's not efficient, and this kind of healing takes incredible patience and vulnerability. That you are called to be part of God's humanizing work of weeping with those in pain. But to do this, you must be willing to see.
That sounds exactly like mourning with those who mourn and comforting those who stand in
That's our baptismal covenants, right?
Love
and
that.
She is not of our faith. How can you not learn about Jesus when reading these things?
Right.
And then just the last one, and this is not necessarily anti-racism work, but more feminism, which is a big F word for a lot of people in the church. Mm-hmm. But it has been incredibly meaningful to me to learn about this. But Sue Monk Kidd, kind of the godmother of feminist books, in her book, The Dance of the Dissident Daughter, she says, you create a path of your own by looking within yourself and listening to your soul. cultivating your own ways of experiencing the sacred and then practicing it. And I think that speaks to having a personal connection with our heavenly parents. And that is something that has enriched me so much in my Latter-day Saint life, from a woman who probably knows little to nothing about the LDS Church.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
What about you?
Yeah, I've got some that are more kind of traditional, spiritual, religious voices.
I knew you were going that way, so I went a different path.
I zig, you zag. That's what we do. And the first two names that I have on my list are going to be very familiar if you've been listening to the podcast, and that's Richard Rohr and Brian McLaren.
Yeah. All-time faves.
Absolutely. Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest. Brian McLaren, a former evangelical pastor, now faculty at the Center for Action and Contemplation, which is founded by Richard Rohr. They're certainly connected. Richard Rohr taught me that we get closer to God by doing it wrong than by doing it right. And his book, Falling Upward, was so meaningful for me because it treated deconstruction as a healthy, normal part of spiritual maturity.
Right.
And then Brian McLaren, in a very similar vein here, he's the one who mapped out the stages of faith that we talk about so often from his book, Faith After Doubt.
Yeah.
And that book gave me language to describe where I was spiritually. It took me away from what we normally teach in the church, which is either you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
And he said, no, there's a lot more shades of gray and nuance to it than that. And you can be in a lot of different places.
Yeah, there probably isn't a book, maybe with those two books, but Faith After Doubt is probably one of the most influential books that has helped me find a way to stay in the church.
Absolutely.
And that is incredible. and I think the fact that it's not an LDS person, but he's encouraging my faith to be rooted where it is, I mean, that just speaks to the beauty that we can get from people that are just teaching goodness, that have Christ, that have God in their lives, influencing them to do good.
Yep. And then I wanted to throw in a couple of names that have been influential recently for me, that are kind of newer to the roster for me. Thich Nhat Hanh is one of them.
Yeah.
Buddhist monk. And there's something that stuck with me recently where he said, be like a river. Okay, and he said if you take a handful of salt and you put it in a cup of water, it ruins the water. But if you put a handful of salt into a river, people can still drink it and cook with it and wash with it and all of these things. And so he says, when our hearts are small, our compassion is limited. And we can't accept and tolerate others. But when we're a river, when our hearts expand, then those things don't make us suffer anymore. And we don't usually do imagery and concepts of love that are that expansive in the church. And I love that idea. And then just one more, this is really short, which is Ram Dass, a spiritual teacher and guru. And he also talks about opening your heart. And he says, how do you do that? And this is what I love. He says, how do you open your heart? Start to love that which you can love and just keep expanding it. Yeah. That's like, oh, man, I think sometimes we teach charity as like, hey, you got to be all the way in, or like it doesn't count. It has to be right now. And I love this message of love the things you can love and then just try to keep expanding it from there. I love that perspective.
Yeah. So can you think of things that we lose when we don't learn from other faiths?
Yeah, absolutely. We've made it this far in the episode without talking about holy envy.
Yeah.
And holy envy is a phrase that's worth acknowledging, talking about admiring the beauty in other faith traditions. Yeah. And so that would be my answer to your question is, when I look around at different faiths, there are things that I go, I want to bring that in. Yeah. I want to bring that back to where I am. And one of them, to be totally frank, is looking at some other Christian denominations and how Jesus-centric they are. And we're getting better, I think. Like,
we're really trying.
This is a campaign that we've mounted, but other churches talk about Jesus all the time. Some, not everybody, but talk about Jesus all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we may have lost that vision a little bit without the influence of these other faiths.
Yeah, I mean, how many talks at conference or and maybe not even this last conference, because there were a lot of Jesus centric talks, but how many times do we hear about the temple when we just, which like is the house of God, and you know, we should be learning about Christ there, but that's not necessarily what everybody connects it to right away. But we get the temple, we get tithing, we get all of these other things before we talk about Christ ever.
Yep.
So
we get a little mixed up in that way.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we lose is if we're not learning from other people, especially people that look differently than us, then our understanding of what neighbor is shrinks to people who only look or live like we do.
That's really good.
That's a theological problem, because clearly the parable of the Good Samaritan, the teaching, the influence, the good, the hero is from the person that they were least likely to listen to. Right. And so if our non-denominational Christian friends are the ones that we are least likely to listen to because we're scared of what they may say to us or what they could do to us if they pull us away, or, you know, if we have this fear instead of understanding the absolute, like, tender and beautiful connection they have to God, then we're missing out on that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think another thing that we lose is as parents, especially as we have a couple teenagers, I think we're losing out on an opportunity to teach our kids how to figure out what is good. If we're not listening to others and we're just saying, no, don't even go there, you listen to this prophet or these 15 men and don't read anyone else, don't go anywhere else. And then they hear things that are good or hard, and they have questions, and we just keep saying, nope, you only have one direction to go, then we are just shutting them down. We're not giving them opportunity to question, and they're more likely to leave if they don't understand how to find goodness.
Yeah, Brian McLaren actually talks about this in Faith After Doubt, where he talks about how in early faith stages, there's good guys and bad guys, right? Yeah. And then you get to know some of the so-called bad guys, and you go, wait a second, like, they're not bad at all, and they've got great things to add. And that can be a faith crisis all its own.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're talking about getting out of that mode so that crisis doesn't even happen.
Well, yeah, if we're learning from outside sources and we're engaged and we're curious about other people, it models to our kids and it signals that our faith is strong enough to hold questions, to hold nuance. And that's probably the most faith-promoting thing that we can do. Right? And so I think that is just a really important thing, especially for people that have children.
Yeah.
You know, there's other benefits for other people that don't have children, but that's kind of top of mind for me with our kids, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we talked about this whole fullness of the gospel thing, and like, oh, that means we have everything. Within this concept of holy envy and how we interact with these other churches, is this idea that, like, is it okay if other churches do some things better than we do? Because they do.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that rubs some people the wrong way a little bit. And just as an example, a while ago, I posted a video on Instagram where I talked about we were in Rome a couple of years ago, and we went into as many churches as we could. And I loved, well, first of all, I loved all of the Jesus-centric art that was in these religious buildings. And you go into our buildings and you're like, okay, whatever.
We've seen it.
Yeah. Well, and there's no art in the chapel typically.
Yeah.
But there's all this great artwork of Jesus, and the altar for the Eucharist is right front and center. It's literally the center focal point of the room. And for us, the sacrament's kind of off to the side, and the speaker is the center. And so I made this video about, hey, I loved how the body and blood of Christ were literally the central focal point. And there were some people in the comments, and it very clearly made them uneasy.
Yeah.
Because I said, hey, I think they do this better than we do. And I had people saying, well, the prophet wants it this way, so this is the way it's supposed to be. I'm like, yeah, I think there's a whole lot of pragmatism going on here. But, I don't think we need to be afraid. I don't think we're going to get infected by things that other churches do well.
I mean, if it is any type of infection, it's going to be a good one.
There you go.
Right?
Perfect.
So just a couple questions to maybe think about as we wrap up.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear, first of all, who has influenced you that is outside of our faith, whether that's a spiritual teacher or, just a person that has had things that have been influential in your life. And you mentioned this earlier, but I think it's really important to say again, what would it look like to bring that knowledge back to our church and improve what we have?
Yeah.
I think we could really grow and become something more inclusive and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think let's end it right there. As always, you can find us on Instagram. I'm at From the Overflow.
And I'm at The Vision Beautiful.
And thanks for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
See ya.